Najmuddin al-Ghazi ibn Artuq, who died on 8th November 1122, was a Turkman, and he was the ruler of a place Mardin from 1107 to 1122, and his father was the founder of the Artukid dynasty, and his father had been appointed governor of Jerusalem by Seljuk Amir Tutush. When Artuk died, Al-Ghazi and his brother Sukman succeeded him as governors of Jerusalem in 1096, and Al-Ghazi allied with Duqaq of Damascus and Yaghi Sian of Antioch against Rizwan of Aleppo. Duqaq and Ridwan were fighting for control of Syria after the death of Tutush, and Al-Ghazi and Duqaq eventually quarreled, and Al-Ghazi was imprisoned, leading to the capture of Jerusalem by his brother Sukman. But Al-Ghazi recovered the city when he was released, and he held the city until it was captured by the Fatimid Wazir of Egypt Al-Afzal Shahanshah in 1098. After this, he went on to various adventures. He entered the service of the Seljuk Sultan Mahmud I, who granted him Hulwan and made him the Shinha of Baghdad, an appointment which oversaw the affairs of the Caliph on the behalf of the Sultan. Al-Ghazi was, however, dismissed from this appointment in 1104 and became leader of the Artukid family after the death of Sukman, his brother. And this was disputed by Sukman's son Ibrahim, but Al-Ghazi took Mardin from him in 1108. As head of Artukids, he made no permanent alliance and switched sides, sometimes allying with fellow Muslims, sometimes with Christians, wherever it suited him. And he was a heavy drinking character, Now, Nicholas Morton's book is very interesting. But my basic difference and dispute with Morton is that the result of the Crusades was not, something which was not inevitable. Logistically, materially, the Crusaders could not have won because they were at the far end of the supply lines, and Christianity was too divided, just like Muslims were too divided, and the outcome of the Crusades was never in doubt, because logistically the Christians could not have sustained whatever happened, Now, Morton's book is very interesting, although very short. The first chapter is about the introduction of the rise of the Crusader states, and he outlines the Crusader states, some, description of the Crusader strategy. Chapter 2 is about the background to the battle for Aleppo, and again very interesting. The third chapter is the struggle for Aleppo and what happened. And the fourth chapter is the analysis of the conflict. Now, Morton thinks that the Crusaders, they had a flawed strategy, and they were, hesitant in capturing big cities like Aleppo, Damascus, and Cairo. And Morton thinks that it was, quote, the Crusaders' fear of the consequences of failure, unquote, in capturing the cities. If they failed, what would happen? Naturally, they were far away from their European homeland, and naturally, they had apprehensions. But I would term Morton's analysis as being wise after the event, being wise after about 900 years, the wisdom of hindsight. And as far as Morton's analysis is concerned, that the crusaders could have won, again, it is far-fetched, simply far-fetched, because the crusaders logistically, materially could never have won. Ultimately, in war, the logistic and the material factors, they decide the victory. Like, I will give you example that when the Japanese came to Burma, their cause was doomed. And beyond Burma, they could just not have advanced, because logistically and materially, they were at their, at the end of their, potential. And the British have overblown the battles of Imphal and Kohima and all that. But Japanese defeat in Burma was inevitable. Simple material and logistic factors, they were heavily outnumbered. They had tanks like matchboxes compared to the British Shermans and heavy tanks, Air power, they were totally overwhelmed. Logistically, materially, army was half-starved. So Crusaders also, like Japanese in Burma, they were at a far weak footing compared to the Muslims. So I don't agree here with Morton's analysis. And if you study this Il-Ghazi, after the Battle of Aleppo, he was defeated again by Crusader states. He suffered a heavy defeat in Georgia later on. And his problem was that he was a heavy drinker and he would get demobilized. And for 3 or 4 days, he was unable to give the orders. Even after the victorious Battle of Aleppo, he was demobilized. Army went into looting and even disintegrated. So Morton's book is very interesting, good history, very crisp, 200 pages. But I cannot agree with his conclusions that the Crusaders could have won, and his strategic advice that Crusaders were afraid of taking big cities. It was a logistic nightmare, and Crusaders were simply not capable of engaging in any such adventure. Yes, a brilliant young British professor in the prime of his age can do such analysis, and Nicholas Morton is a brilliant author. People like him. His lovely style, engaging style, writes very well, crisp books. But with his analysis, one cannot agree, being wise after the event and exaggerating Battle of Aleppo. Aleppo actually has become very interesting because the American and the British and the NATO proxies have suffered the greatest defeat in Aleppo again. The Lion of Syria has defeated them. The US CIA, because of massive corruption, I repeat, massive corruption in intelligence contracts. American taxpayer was bled white in Syria, and America lost the war, which they could have won. Yes, Crusaders could not have won in Aleppo at the time of Morton's book's subject, but the Americans and the NATO could have won in Aleppo maybe in 2009 and 11, but they lost because of the CIA corruption. Massively corrupt agency, CIA and DIA both, and pathetic people, pathetic people. They are more degenerate than the Crusaders, the Americans. And the worst part is that they have no religion. They are, worse than pagans. And you can't even call them Christians, But anyhow, a very interesting book, good read, but cannot agree with his analysis. But I like him, he's a brilliant guy, Morton. Highest regards and full marks for writing, although one cannot agree with his analysis. Job well done otherwise.